Welcome to the Dapper community call for October 13th. As always, feel free to ask questions, drop them in the chat, or ask to be unmuted. We have a few interesting things today. We're going to start off with Sander and Edwin showing us, running through a Dapper eShop demo for .NET that they built. That's going to be pretty cool. And then we got Mark Fussell and Mark Schmarny talking about the transitioning Dapper to the Dapper projects to open governance. We recently, you might have seen the blog for it, so there's going to be more details on that. And then Mark Fussell is going to share some more information on Dapper release updates coming up. And as always, we're going to have some time at the end of the session for just general discussions, questions. But as always, if you have specific questions on anything we're showing right now, then feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll try to address them as we go along. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and Edwin and Sander, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, great, thanks. So I will start by sharing my desktop. So this should work. All right. So thanks for having us. I'm Sander Molenkamp. I'm a principal cloud architect at Support, which is a IT consultancy company in the Netherlands. And I'm joined by my buddy Edwin.
Yep. Also architect at Support, and of course, very enthusiastic about Dapper and do lots of cloud native stuff. So Dapper fits in there very well. And thanks for having us.
Yeah, and thanks for giving us some time to show what we've been working on with eShop and Dapper. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar with eShop, eShop is a classic .NET reference application. It's been here for a couple of years. It's an implementation of a web shop that lets you buy some cool .NET merchandise. And there are different variations of it. So for example, there's the eShop on web, which shows you how to build a web application. There's a AI ML version, which shows you how to do all kinds of cool AI and machine learning stuff. But the version that we were interested in is called eShop on containers, which is eShop based on a microservices architecture with Docker containers. And we wanted to see how the use of Dapper would change the implementation of eShop on containers, and if it would really make eShop more maintainable and easier to write. So we are going to have a quick look at the architecture of eShop on containers. Then I'll show you a demo, and then we'll go over some of the Dapper building blocks and how we apply them to eShop. So let's switch to PowerPoint. So if we look at the original architecture of eShop on containers, so you would have this web front end, and there are a couple of them. There's a single page application, but there are also mobile variants, but we're just focusing on the single page application for now. So that front end has to make some calls to backend services, and it does that by making first a call to the API gateway. And the API gateway is implemented using Envoy, which is an open source, really high performance agent service proxy. And from the API gateway, simple CRUD requests are just directly forwarded towards the backend services. And there's a whole lot of backend services. For example, the catalog contains all the products that you can buy. The basket API stores the shopping carts. The ordering API is for the ordering process, and so forth. Now, there may be some more functionally complex calls which require more than a single call to a backend service. And those calls are being routed through a web shopping aggregator service, which is just another .NET service, which can make multiple calls to backend services. So for example, if you update your shopping basket, then the aggregator service first goes to the catalog API to get all the current prices, and then it goes to the basket API to actually store the latest version of your shopping basket. And then finally, backend services also communicate with each other, and they do this using asynchronous messaging just to keep them nicely independent and loosely coupled. And eShop contains 2 implementations for that. It supports RabbitMQ and it also supports Azure Service Bus. So this basically, it's a little bit high level because there are more services in eShop on containers than those that I'm showing on the slide. But we've basically just threw them all out because we only need these services to show how powerful Dapr can be for building these kind of systems. So the first thing we did to Dapperize eShop is to just add a bunch of sidecars to these services. And as you can see here, we are adding them to all the .NET services, which is all the backend services as well as the aggregate servers. But we've also added a sidecar to the Envoy proxy so that we can also use Dapper service invocation from the API gateway to the other services. So let me show you how this works and well, prove to you that it actually works. So I've got the code here in Visual Studio Code. And as you can see, we've got some different deployment scripts. We have got support for Kubernetes, but right now I'm using Docker Compose to run it locally on my Macintosh using Docker for Desktop. So this contains some Dapper configuration files and component configurations. And I've got this Docker Compose file. And as you can see here, for example, the Basket API, this is my application container, and I've added a Dapper sidecar to that service. And the rest of the Docker Compose file is basically the same. It's server, sidecar, server, sidecar, server, sidecar. And I've started that. So if you look at the containers that are currently running, there's a lot. And you can see a lot of Dapper sidecars here, right? Okay, so let me show you actually what it looks like. So this is our storefront. And we've actually got some new items to sell. We've now got some nice Dapper swag that you can order. And from this page, I can simply add stuff to my shopping cart. And you can see this little one here. If I add something else, it's 2, so it counts the stuff in my shopping basket. Let's add some Dapper stuff as well. And this is all updated directly in the SPA because eShop, you also use SignalR to send back events from the backend services to the client. So if I update, for example, if I want to buy a lot of caps, you can see the price changing immediately and stuff like that. Okay, so from this page, I can go to the checkout, enter a shipping address, this is all fine, and start the ordering process. What you see here is another SignalR notification that my order has been updated to submitted. And now in the backend, a little bit of a simulation starts for the ordering process. So there's a lot of task delays in there just to simulate a real process. So after a while, you would see this order go from submitted to validated to being paid, to being fulfilled, stuff like that. Now, this is all using Dapper building blocks behind the scenes. So of course, one thing that gives us is observability. So now I should be able to just go to my Zipkin instance and see what's actually happening with eShop. So if I run a query, I can see a lot of those components that I've shown you in the architecture diagram pop up here. So you can see the web shopping gateway, which is the Envoy proxy. Then you can see that we are actually using the state management block from the Basket API to get some state. You can also see that we're using Popsup to publish integration events. So this is already something very nice that Dapper gives us without any custom code. We get a lot of insight into how the system is behaving. And of course, with Zipkin, you get nice graphs such as these, where you see all the traffic between the services. All right, so let's move back to my PowerPoint presentation.
We must be making money if you see that kind of traffic, right? So.
Oh yeah, everybody's buying Dapper swag.
Good business day.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the building blocks and how we implemented or how we changed eShop using those building blocks. So one of the things we did is use service invocation. Now, eShop on containers, the original solution uses both HTTP REST and gRPC service calls. So for all the simple CRUD calls, they're using HTTP REST, and then the aggregator service uses gRPC. And we've changed all that to use Dapper service invocation. So now instead of directly calling a backend service, the aggregator service, for example, makes a call to its sidecar. We use the .NET SDK for that. The .NET SDK provides us with a Dapper client class, which exposes an evoke method. And the Dapper client always uses gRPC to connect to its local sidecar. Then the local sidecar will use a service discovery to get the address of the remote sidecar, and again use gRPC to call that remote sidecar. And then finally, the remote sidecar will call the actual API, the actual backend servers. And that call is always done using HTTP REST in eShop on Dapper. So why REST? Why not also do that in gRPC? Well, if we were to support gRPC in these backend services, then we would have to implement the Dapper protofile for that to work with the Dapper sidecar. And that would be a bit more code than just writing a simple ASP.NET Core controller. So we prefer just to write simple controllers, let them be called through HTTP REST. And we still get gRPC performance where it counts, because we still get that gRPC benefit between the sidecars. And those are the most important calls because those sidecars may be located on different servers, right? Whereas the sidecar in its application will always be located on the same server. And then we ran into another thing with service invocation, which is authorization. Some of these backend services, like the Basket API, are protected. And eShop on containers uses identity server to get an access token, and you need that token to call the service. So we needed some way to flow these access tokens along with the request from the front end to the application gateway to the aggregate service all the way to the backend servers. But the .NET SDK didn't support headers yet. So we were losing the authorization header as soon as we made a call through the .NET SDK. And this is why it's so nice that Dapper is open source, because we could just simply contribute a PR to fix that issue and get on our merry way. So as you can see in the code sample, now since version 0.11, I think, you can now specify request headers when invoking a remote method in C#. And we use that to flow the access token to the backend servers. Then we've got some stuff around state management. Basically, a lot of services in eShop use SQL database to store the state, and eShop uses Entity Framework Core for that. That's perfectly fine. We don't want to change that with anything else. But there are other services which use more simple storage. For example, the Basket microservice uses Redis. And it uses the Stack Exchange or the Redis NuGet package. And that was quite a bit of code, especially around setting up the multiplexer for the connection and stuff. And so we changed that to use the Dapper state management building block. And of course, what that also gives us is that now we're no longer tied to Redis, but we can just by changing the configuration, store the state in table storage or in any other supported component. So that's also very nice. And if you look at the implementation, eShop used a repository pattern. So an iBasket repository interface was already being used in the code, and we simply provided a Dapper Basket repository implementation of that interface. And that's really small. Like this is not a complete implementation, but it's only a couple of lines longer in real life. So that's very nice as well. So Popsup, Edwin, you want to talk about Popsup?
Yeah, as you could see in the architecture drawing that Sander showed, that the services are sending messages to each other, And as he told, RabbitMQ and Azure Service Bus were the two implementations that were available for eShop on containers. And because you have several ways of sending messages, an abstraction layer was created. So we have some kind of a default RabbitMQ persistent connection, and that all implements some kind of an abstraction of an event bus using RabbitMQ. And we also have one for Azure Service Bus. So, and that was quite a bit of code. So if you could go to the next slide. Here you can see a piece of configuration. And what you see here is that you need to figure out as an application whether or not you're running with Azure Service Bus or if you're running with RabbitMQ. So there's some way of configuring that. And then you use different implementations of things like event bus subscription managers and persistent connections. And so this is supposed to abstract away everything around these, message brokers, but it's still a fair bit of code that you have to maintain, and it's also not very, it's quite complex code that you have to maintain here. So what we tried to do was to make sure that we use Dapr for communicating over an event broker or event bus, because yes, of course, the whole way of Dapr is that you can make that abstract. So what we did was we took the default implementation of the iEvent bus. It had all kinds of stuff around subscriptions, but also a publish event. And what we did was just implement that using the Dapr client. So the Dapr client is used here to do a publish event async, and then we publish it to some kind of a topic. And what we had to do here was we did a little trick, because for Dapr, you need to define the topics that you want to send the messages to so that the services that need these messages can subscribe to them. And we just used the type of the event. So the .NET type of the event, we used that as the topic name. So a lot of code was eliminated here because we could just use the Dapr client, and everything around switching different event brokers was just done through the whole component model that Dapr offers for the Popsup building block. There's one thing that's a little bit strange here too, if you look closely at the code, because we made this a generic one. This wasn't a generic implementation. We made it a generic one. And also what we did here was a little bit of a shenanigan, which we cast the event that we get to a dynamic. And this has to do with the way the serialization works within the Dapr building block. And if we don't do this, then something weird happened. And that has to do with the way the events were sent. So if you can go to the next slide, Sander, I can show you what happens there. So this is a snippet here in which we can send different types of events. So based on some kind of rule, we have one or the other event that we want to call. But if you can click once more at somewhere, if you can see, this event is defined as the base class for all the events. And if you would send this integration event and we would not cast it to a dynamic, then you will not have all the fields of the event, but only the fields that were defined on this base class. So this was a little bit of a thing that we had to figure out. And we are still looking into whether or not we can make it a bit better. But for now, this was fine for the implementation. And the best thing was that we can just reuse the existing implementation or the existing abstraction of the event bus. So all the business code didn't need to change. They could just use the same extraction. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and to add to that, Edwin, the actual culprit here is the system text JSON serializer.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think once that starts to get more mature and get some more features, we probably won't need this hack anymore in the future.
Yeah, probably in .NET 5, they did a lot of stuff in that area, so maybe it will be better. But for now, we needed to do this kind of stuff. So that was all around publishing events. So we were able to implement or basically slide in Dapr without changing any code in the business code. On the receiving side, there were all kinds of event handlers that were created and that were created by the subscription providers and subscription handlers. And the thing what we did, we created just a web API controller. And using the ASP.NET integration package for Dapr, we all decorated methods for these different events with a topic attribute. So this way we could create some kind of a way to couple the event broker to these kinds of methods. And then if you look at the order started integration event handler type that's being used here, and we get that from the dependency injection system, that is just an existing event handler that was already in eShop on containers. So the only thing that we had to do was create web API controller, slap some topic attributes on there, and then call the existing event handler. And there, all the integration was done. So that was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and I really like how that's it kind of makes it the same as calling an API, right? So whether it's a HTTP request that you're getting in through an API or you're handling a message, the model is the same. You just write a controller method. Yeah, I really like that. Yes. So I think we have to wrap up pretty quickly, Edwin, because as usual, we are taking up too much time. So using Dapr in eShop, it definitely reduced the amount of code that needs to be written manually. And we also get these great extra benefits like MTLS or the observability with Zipkin that we showed you. Yep.
And with very little effort. That was quite surprising.
Definitely. Also, what we really liked, it just being an open source product, and with Dapr still being pretty early in development, we still had the chance to change some things to the interfaces to make it work better with the .NET SDK. So that's really cool. As for the eShop on Dapr solution itself, it's currently hosted in a private repository. The code is working, but the documentation is really lacking. So it's a little bit complex to get it running right now. So we're working on that. And as soon as that is finished, I hope in a couple of weeks, then we will make that repository public, and it will be hosted in the Microsoft.NET Architecture repository. So you can find it there. And if you've got any questions about eShop, just ask us, and maybe we've got at the end of the community call, maybe we've got some time to discuss it. So yeah, thanks for the time.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Sander and Edwin. I think that I saw a question there from Brooke along the way around your development environment, kind of pros and cons of using Docker Compose versus Kubernetes. Do you want to address that now, maybe really quickly?
Yeah, we can get it a little bit. Yeah, first of all, yeah, Dapr of Docker Compose was basically also chosen to make the local development story a little bit better, because I think, Sander, you also arranged that that you could also set breakpoints and stuff like that during development, right?
Yeah, so one of the things that's very nice if you use, I'm using Visual Studio Code now, but if you use the full-fledged Visual Studio, that has great support for Docker Compose, and you can just set some breakpoints, press F5, it will start your containers, and you can jump into that. So that makes it very easy. I have to say, we haven't looked really deep into how to get that F5 debug circle working well in Kubernetes, but I do think we want to spend some more time there and add some documentation to the repository about what the different models are that you can use.
Yeah, but the production scenario will be Kubernetes. That's what we're focusing on for running something like that in production. But the Docker Compose part is predominantly for the local development environment.
Great, thank you, Edwin and Sander. And we'll be sure to, once this repo is public, to link to it from our samples repo as well. With that, real quick, I'll turn it over to Mark Fussell.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, well, thanks. We're going to talk a little bit now about Dapr Open Governance and what that means to the project. So from the very beginning of Dapr, we have committed entirely to making sure that Dapr was going to be taken to a vendor-neutral foundation, and we're very keen to make sure that that continues to remain on the path and is our objective around these this is a foundation such as CNCF. And so to do that, 2 weeks ago, we announced a path that we were going to start the transition to Dapr to an open governance model. And we wrote this in a blog post. You see the blog post link at the bottom here. And that is because we want to make sure that Dapr is fully managed in an open governance way, and make sure that we have full transparency about everything that we do. And so that we make sure that your full contributions from the community, because we want to make sure that Dapr is one and built for the community, and it's always available by everyone who can be part of contributions to this. So what we did is effectively created a repo, which is a community repo, to bring together all the assets for how we describe what the roles and responsibilities are. And this is kind of the first stage in describing, what you can do as a contributor to become involved with Dapr as a project. I'm going to let Jeroen jump in right now just to dive into a little bit about what the community repo contains and what do those rights and responsibilities look like, so you can understand what those are. So Jeroen, do you want to take over?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Let me just share my screen. And let me know when you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, so let me just go back here a bit. This is the Dapper community repository. We made it public, I think, around a month ago, just before the announcement. It contains all of the community assets for the Dapper project. The major document that this repository contains currently is the community membership one, which really details how one becomes from a casual contributor to a member of the Dapper GitHub organization. And then that's really the path to take on more roles inside of the project, like approver and maintainer. And also in parallel to that, the ability to become a TSC member. The TSC is the Technical and Steering Committee, which has not yet been established. That's the other major document, which will come in an open PR soon, which will really detail about the governance model of Dapper itself. And the committee itself is really more about the overall direction of the projects and other issues, more logistical issues, and also being able to resolve technical issues across the entirety of the Dapper org. So this is something that we will be making out in the open. There will be a PR. We will welcome feedback and user feedback on it. So really the PR to create the charter for the committee itself will be open from day one. And so really the most influential document, I think, currently is this one. It's the community membership one. And if you've been a Dapper contributor, please look here now about how you can become a member. Okay, so a member is really the first step in becoming a more influential role inside of the Dapr org. Now, I want to talk about what contribution means. Contribution does not only mean code contributions. We follow the CNCF standard here. Contributions mean participation in Gator even, issues, comments on issues, opening up new issues, doing code reviews, even if you're not a member of the org, all those things count towards contributions to the Dapper project. So this is not just PRs, right? And then what you need to do to basically become a member is go to the repository here, and I'll just share how to do that. Open a new window, you go into issues, and you basically open a new issue, and we have a template called organization membership request. You click on get started, and there's just a bunch of stuff to do here. For example, you need to enable a two-factor authentication in your GitHub account. You need to subscribe to the community. You need to list a number of PRs which you reviewed or authored or issues that you responded to, and that's basically it. So we have a couple of membership requests already and more incoming every day. So do that, and you can read about what it means to become a member, what are the requirements and responsibilities for each one of these roles. So we have members, we have approvers, and finally, we have maintainers who are the overall decision makers about the technical direction, understanding, and the goal for a Dapper repository. So a maintainer is for a given repository. It's not for the whole Dapper project. The responsibility for the entirety of the Dapper project in terms of goals and vision and direction is really with the yet unestablished technical and steering committee, which, like I said, we will start drafting the charter of pretty soon. So if anyone has any questions about that, ask now, or we can just get to it during the Q&A portion of the community call. Thank you.
Let me share my screen back here again. just to finish up. So the goal then, as Jeroen pointed out, is that next we're going to establish the role and charter of the technical steering committee, and then what we're going to be moving towards is making sure that some of the processes that we have, we move them all out entirely into the open. So today you'll see that all the PRs there, you can see inside the repos, you can see the milestone project plan we put inside there, you can see all of the issues that go into a particular milestone, and everything's built inside the committee. But we don't necessarily do everything like some of the triaging of all the issues currently in the open as we kind of have been doing so far. So we're going to be making sure that we have set up things like Zoom calls, that we can do those things inside, and making sure that there's an open, transparent mechanism by which all the approvers and maintainers can take part inside the processes inside each one of the repos. So we're putting that all in place over the coming weeks, and you'll hear more about it. And of course, feel free to reach out and just send us questions or suggestions even about what you think it should go. So let's use this opportunity now just to take a few questions, if there are any on this, about the open governance. If people have posted anything in the chat window, or you want to open up your mic. If not, I'm going to move on.
Yeah, feel free to drop questions
Okay.
chat or raise your hand to be unmuted. I don't see anything, Mark, so we can.
Okay, great. So, so we're pretty excited about the open governance. The other thing I want to talk about then is, which I think it is just as important, is that we now are establishing a path for how we take Dapper into production readiness. It's quite amazing, actually, that we released Dapper on the 16th of November last year. Sorry, 16th of October last year. So it's literally been a year since we released it. And in that time, we've had many beta releases. We've, at the 0.11 we did last month, and each one of these has been taking Dapper closer and closer to production readiness. And we're pretty clear now that we understand where the path is to take us to get us to a stable release that you can start to use in production. So our goal is to start releasing a set of release candidates for a v1.0 release, starting with the first one in November of this year. So next month. And each one of those release candidates will be frequently updated based upon feedback that we get from you in terms of bug fixes, minor features, but the feedback will drive what we fix inside them, how we do those releases, how frequently we do them. But we expect to do those releases sort of every few weeks, through a cycle as we start from November through December and into the new year. And our whole goal is to get to a v1.0 stable release that can be used in production. Now, what does that mean? It means that we believe in the quality of the Dapper open source project, that it can be used inside production scenarios. We've been working very, very closely with a set of customers actually who are and have actually also already taken Dapper to running in production scenarios. So to a large degree, we've been given a lot of confidence, and we thank them greatly for actually giving us a lot of the feedback as we've gone over the last year to get Dapper to a stable code base. And so our goal is at some time in the first quarter of next year, of course, based on feedback and issues and the number we get, to kind of release a final v1.0 stable release. And this will be across the major repos, the runtime repo, the CLI repo, the SDKs, and the components contrib. Specifically on the components contrib, to be clear there's around 75 particular components today, which is a huge number because the community's donated so many of them. And we're not going to be able to validate all of them. We're going to be picking a particular set that will be a subset of those, probably somewhere around between 15 and 20 that are currently used by the customers that we have running in production, and say that that's the set that will be taken into production itself. And the remainder will remain in sort of a beta status. And we'll have a clear sort of guidance about how we can take all of the components into a GA status. So, and then we'll be doing that through sort of, the time frame between, when v1.0 stable release is released and, some time period after that. But, we won't be able to have all the components at a GA status at the very start, just because there's so many of them, and we're still putting in place a mechanism by which the components themselves go through a life cycle process from alpha, beta to a GA thing. But the point is that that stable release will now be a chance that you can take Dapper into production. It's super exciting for us because we know that at that point, we have to make sure that we are very conscious about how the future versions of Dapper go, so that we will make sure that our versioning guarantees are put in place. So if we have to add sort of changes to any particular APIs, you'll see them go through a versioning process. And the large degree here is that you won't have breaking changes as we've been having between the beta releases, as we've kind of adapted based upon the feedback. And what we're asking for is we really need your help. It's an exciting time to say that we kind of get ourselves on this roadmap, but we need your help in finding issues and bugs and doing validation across this, taking the RC releases, building applications, taking them into production yourself. If you actually have a service or an application that you're building that you are taking to production, we'd love to hear from you. We'd like to make sure that we hear back from you that you've taken the RC releases and sort of validated them. That's what we'll be doing with the customers that we're working with, is that we'll give them the RC release, they'll validate it, that they've run it in production. We're making sure we focus on things like doing rolling upgrades through the production environments, making sure that we don't have any breaking changes inside them all, and making sure effectively that we have full test coverage. And we have a set of criteria around perf and scale and test coverage that we're very focused on. And that's where we want your help as much as we can to find bug issues, to contribute to bug fixes, to contribute to end-to-end test scenarios around those, to contribute to unit tests, anything that you feel that you can do to help us make a high quality release, including going into the documentation. I mean, the documentation is a great passion of ours to have great docs. We want to make sure that there are docs that cover all the features, that they're not inconsistent. If there are missing documentation, we want to include that. If there is wrong documentation. So even in areas of documentation, in the samples, as well as in sort of the main runtime repos and sort of CLI. So please help us here. Please help us get on this path to the stable 1.0 release. And hopefully we can all, line on this together. And one thing we wanted to point out that because of, the stable release, the 1.0 release is coming, the maintainers, the improvers who are inside of repos will be very focused on those releases. So we kind of want to point out that, pushing PRs to us at that may be delayed for some time, just because the maintainers are going to be prioritizing the 1.0 release. So it's not that we don't want any of these PRs from you. We'd love to have them, but of course, we can't have a continuously changing product underneath our feet with lots of, PRs that contain large feature sets where we're trying to get to a stable release at the same time. And so you just may see that some of those may be delayed for a period of time where we have to get to the 1.0 release. And then after that, we'll focus on, some of those PRs more. So that's where we're asking you to kind of give us a balance, help us on the release candidates, help us on the stable 1.0 release. Feel free to submit PRs, but just expect that, they won't have the primary focus until we get to the 1.0 release that will happen, at the beginning of next year. And, that's what I have. I think it's a great kind of, we'll post a blog post later this week explaining some more details around all this. But, here's a chance now to ask some questions around this and anything that you want to have about what you think is important to you. And of course, bring out some of the issues that you think are important for the scenarios that you run, I focused on. But, post the 1.0 release, we're going to be driven then primarily by the community asks about where we'll bring features in, based upon, where you want to take the product as a whole. So let's open up for any questions on this. Any questions we want to have on sort of the RC release, the road to kind of production readiness?
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I think it is also maybe good to remind people that, as Mark said, we welcome and we love seeing PRs from the community. We do try to, if you've been contributing to Dapper, we do try to have a PR always be attached to an issue. And a lot of the discussions on priority and what needs to be done happens in the context of the issue. So I think PRs coming out of nowhere usually, we try to avoid that. Yeah, just to add that.
Okay.
So I'm
going to stop sharing and hand it back to you, Ori.
Yeah, you can stop sharing. Yeah. I'm not seeing any more questions about this, but I'll guess we'll open it up to any kind of questions right now about anything you want to ask about Dapper, about anything we showed today, anything you've been tackling or see some challenges or issues. We've got some time, so happy to take any questions. So I see Ray, let me unmute you. Ray, are you able to unmute?
Yes, I thought you might like some feedback on the Arm64 support in the 0.11.
Oh, yes.
First, the platform that we're doing that Dapper Arm64 development on is a NVIDIA Xavier NX, which is their latest ML Edge, so-called Edge AI platform. Pretty much as soon as 0.11 came out, we got it set up on that platform. Unfortunately, we ran into an issue on the initialization in that the open Zipkin container would not run. And when we looked into the various logs and then went over to the Docker log, it was complaining that there was a format issue. And when we looked up what that meant, it's that it wasn't in an ARM64 binary in the container, apparently.
Right.
So I thought I'd just let you know here, preview it before I filed an issue. Okay.
Actually, you're right. So file the issue. So I did exactly the same thing over the weekend. I deployed Dapper onto a Raspberry Pi I have here. I did the Dapper initialize and placement, and the Redis containers came up, but the Zipkin container didn't. And now I know why.
Okay.
So yes, it's an issue. It's an issue.
Okay. Will you handle it as a Mark Fussell issue, or do you want me to?
No. So please raise the issue. I mean, the issue is that we don't have the Zipkin container. So basically, did you trace it down to the fact that there's the Zipkin container image isn't built from? Is that what the issue is?
Yeah, that's why we went over to the Docker log to see what problem Docker was having with initializing the container. Okay. And then when we looked up the error on the web, it seems to indicate that no, it's not the ARM64 format.
Yeah, no. Please raise the issue. Raise it in the I guess in the Dapper CLI repo. Yeah.
Okay, and Dapper CLI will do. The other thing I'd quickly mention is there may be an issue with the Python SDK, because we were going to use Python to do some verification cases and so forth. But we're not sure yet whether it's an issue with the Python, package install on the version of Linux that NVIDIA has on the platform, or whether it's a Dapper SDK issue. So when we do a little more investigation, we'll if it is with the Python SDK, we'll file an issue on that as well. Okay.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for helping us out. Yeah.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I'm seeing a bit of a lively discussion around TIE and .NET 5. I don't know if Ryan or Richard, you want to speak to that? Yes, you turn it.
Yeah, I have a side project that I started way back when Dapr was just starting, and I've been busy with some consulting, so I can't get back to it. But I invested a lot to get the actors working with Twilio, and I want to move it to K8S, and hoping that we can all meet together at 5.0. But I don't know when Dapr's at 5.0, and I don't know when Ty's at 5.0.
Yeah, so this is Ryan. I'm actually the co-creator of Ty, and I'm not part of that team anymore. I'm over here working with these nice people now. I'm gonna go knock some heads together and see what they're doing, because they're the .NET team, and if they're not working on their own newest stuff, then that's not a great look. So I'll go chase what's going on with .NET and Ty. I think that what we should probably do for Dapper that we're not doing right now is we're not running any of the tests on .NET 5. And now that .NET 5 is in RC, that's probably something we should do. Yeah. I'm curious if anybody else on the call has scouted .NET 5. I was recently going through some of my Dapper samples and updating them to latest bits, and I've just been running on 3.1. Has anyone on the call tried 5 yet?
I've done some work in 5, but not a whole lot inside of Dapper. So
the goal would be that we just get it for free, other than, you know, we run the unit tests and stuff like that. But
yep.
I'm only aware of one change that we need to make in Dapper for 5. And if you are blocked by that, you'll find an issue about binary formatter, and there's an opt out to work around it. But that's the only thing I'm aware of. I'll give it a try and see what the results are.
I mean, there are some extra features in there, like certainly the JSON serializer and deserializer has a bunch of new features in it,
yep.
as well as the record construct type, which, you know, isn't used at all until 5.0. So, but it
yep.
has some advantages for there as well. So I don't know how you're going to incorporate those kind of features, but other than that, it should be a free, like you say.
Yeah. So I think for the Dapper SDK, I don't think that we actually, maybe we can do some sample building to highlight some of those uses. We're built on top of that stuff anyway, and so there shouldn't really be a change in .NET SDK, because we're built on top of MVC, and we're built on top of the JSON serializer. So all those features should just light up without us doing any work, which is awesome.
But Dapper won't go to production other than 5.0, right? Like, we're not going to go to prod with 3.1.
Well, the plan has been for Dapper to target 3.1, because 3.1 is an LTS.
Yes.
5 is not an LTS.
Yeah. I don't know when the date of 5 is anyway. Do you know the date of 5, or is there not
November?
The date of 5 is November. So the .NET team is now on a yearly release cadence.
Okay. Yes.
Which they're actually, I'm really proud of them. They're actually tracking to. When I was on the team, it seemed very aspirational, and they're actually sticking to cadence. So they have an RC out now, and they will have a release sometime Q4 this year. And then they're starting to do planning and make announcements around .NET 6. But just to clarify for anybody who's got any confusion about it, for Dapper, it's not an or choice. The SDK will target 3.1, but be compatible with 5. So 3.1 is the LTS release. 5 is a non-LTS release. 6 will be the next LTS from .NET. But it's not an or choice. You get to use any of those starting with 3.1.
Good. And I see in the chat, your own has gone down the rabbit hole of Zipkin and Arm. I don't know if you want to share anything your own, or I guess
it looks like
that. So right now it seems like Zipkin cannot run in an ARM architecture. This is the conclusion I got to from looking at those two issues. And so, I mean, if you're on Dapr in a self-hosted environment, or in actually any environment, you're not specifically tied to Zipkin. I think for us as maintainers of the project, we need to make sure that we have exporters in place for at least one tracing backend that supports a multi-architecture. Yeah, deployment. So it probably means we're going to have to add Jaeger. I didn't know that Zipkin doesn't have ARM. It seems really weird to me. Yeah, so and also I don't want to wait until this gets solved upstream, because you know, we should have a solution in place for people to be able to run a tracing backend on on-premise environments with whatever architecture they want. So I take this as really a sign for us to add a support for an additional tracing backend. So Ray, when you open the issue, I'll probably open up another issue linking to it or from it about adding an additional backend. And it probably won't be Zipkin. Once Zipkin fixes this upstream, Dapr will naturally support it. But I don't see how we can make a change to support Zipkin with an ARM architecture now, other than maybe trying to compile the thing ourselves and building our own image. But I wouldn't necessarily go there.
Yeah.
This is Youngbu. When it comes to Zipkin and an exporter side, basically, we've been talking about we are only supporting the OpenTelemetry collector agent. Then once we have the OpenTelemetry collector agent, and then you can install the OpenTelemetry collector agent, and then you can select any type of the telemetry backends. This is our plan for the additional exporters. So, yeah. Yep.
Okay. I think I see another question from Richard about Kubernetes Bridge. I'm not sure what you mean there. I don't know if anybody can
debugging tool for attaching to Kubernetes and attaching to containers, and I've just seen a scrap of it. So, but I'm just curious as to where I have 2 weeks free of. I can spend some time, so I want to make sure I'm Dapper actors, Kubernetes, and Thai are my focus for the next 2 weeks.
Okay, got it. I don't know if anybody on the call has tried using that for debugging Dapper applications running in Kubernetes. You can share their experience.
I haven't, but it looks interesting.
Yeah.
I just thought maybe the team was advising them in terms of what your guys are doing with Dapper with the sidecars and the whole architecture on that side of the fence that I'm still trying to. It's like regex, you know, you can look at it 100 times and it just doesn't sink in.
Yeah, no, we haven't done anything.
Okay.
Okay, great. So there aren't any further questions. We can wrap up this community call. Thank you everybody for joining. As always, keep in touch and keep asking questions and engaging in the community through Gitter, through GitHub issues. We really appreciate any contributions. As was previously said, those are code contributions, but also being part of the discussion, opening issues. And this is especially important as we move towards the RC releases. So thank you so much.